What is going on, investors? Hopefully, you guys are having a great day out there. Time to talk about IBM Corporation, ticker symbol IBM. This is like your dad's or your grandpa's tech stock, if you will. But look, over the last year, this thing is up 12%, and that doesn't include the 4.72% dividend yield we are getting on this stock at the current time. That's $6.56 per share. And look, it does not have a tech-like forward PE of only, and I say only, 12.7. Now, IBM reported their earnings, their Q2 earnings, just moments ago, and so I will help you walk through those. We'll take a look at the numbers. We'll take a look at all the different revenues, the profits, the cash, what they've used their cash for over the last few months as we head into this Q2. And then finally, we get over the stock chart as well. This one is performing really nice in the after hours. Initially on the after hours, including most stocks today, were down big, including IBM. Not big, but down about 0.8%. The stock market had a really, really down day today. And so we'll talk, I know I got a lot of lines on here. I'll erase some of them, make it a little bit simpler, but we're seeing in the after hours, this thing is actually ticked up very, very nicely. And so we'll talk about that from a technical perspective as well. Now, IBM's Q2 earnings came in, beat on revenue, beat on earnings. We'll talk about that more in depth. But what I want to talk about is some of the stuff has been happening with IBM since they last reported their earnings 3 months ago. So they first announced that they were the first company to develop a 2-nanometer chip. I believe most people are on 5 and 6 nanometers, maybe even 7 nanometers. So to get all the way down to 2 is quite a development. And if IBM can be on the cutting edge of this, certainly bodes well for the stock. Now, they lift their dividend by a penny. So IBM is one of those companies that has raised their dividend for a very long period of time, but they've gotten to the point where they're just giving you these penny increases. But still, you know, you're looking at a 4% dividend yield on this one, even more than that at the current time. Now, the way IBM, and we'll see evidence when we get over to the financials and take a look at what they've been using their cash for, they've been on a buying spree, and this is how IBM is going to continue to grow as a company. So they bought this Blue Tab Solutions to expand its portfolio of data and hybrid cloud consulting services. They bought BoatBox, which is a DevOps consultancy firm. They acquired WAG, I think that's how you say that, is a Salesforce consulting partner in Europe. And then their biggest acquisition was this Turbonomic. That deal was estimated in the $1.5 to $2 billion range. When we get over to the financials, we'll see it probably, I would guess, probably came in on the low end of that, at least from a cash perspective. It could be that IBM issued some shares for that as well. Now, let's move over to the results. These are our most recent results. Again, just out less than 30 minutes ago. We've got our financial results here. We got our revenue and our profit here. So here's our 3 months ended. The two left-hand columns. Last year is 2020. Obviously, this year is this far left-hand column. They also give you a 6-month view since this is our Q2 results, and we've got 20 over 21 on those results as well. We see they break it out, their revenue. So they got this total revenue line, which we see went from 18.1 billion up to 17.45. That's about, you know, what, $620 million bolted onto that revenue. You'd like to see things grow a little bit quicker, but this is IBM, and you know, they are in very, very competitive marketplace for the most part. We see their cloud and cognitive software. This is the business that they wanted to build up for a number of different reasons. One, it's just the hot segment of this business market, but also when you come down here to gross profit margin, it is the highest gross margins that they have in all their business. You're talking 78% gross margins on this, okay? And that grew actually pretty nicely. Actually, most of the growth, or a vast majority of the growth that we saw in this quarter, came from cloud and cognitive software, which again is the highest gross margin business unit. So you like to see that. That went from 5.75 billion up to about 6.1 billion. All the way through, everything looking pretty good. It all flows down to our gross profit, which is blended when you factor in all the business models at about 48%. And that actually held steady over the last 3 months. And we're even seeing over the last 6 months within a point or two of holding steady. It cleared $9 billion to that gross profit side for the 3 months. Holds true for 6 months. You're right there within $1 billion of kind of annualizing out that $9 billion mark here at $17.2 billion in revenue for the last 6 months. Now, in terms of coming all the way down to the bottom line, obviously we're skipping a few things. We've got SG&A, research and development, other types of expenses Those held rather steady. You like to see that. And even for the last 6 months, we actually saw expenses go down from 15.1 billion down to 14.7. So they're able to grow their revenues. They're growing their gross margins, and they're actually lowering their kind of operating costs. So you kind of like to see that. That's probably going to impact positively net income. And you see over the last 3 months here on a quarterly basis, you went from 1.36 to 1.35. Again, you have some taxes, some interest rates and things like that. So it can change. Obviously, you see their effective tax rate went from 13.3 up to 14.7. You see here for the last 6 months, our net income went down, but all things being considered, pretty steady. And that's what you'd expect, obviously, with something like IBM. For the quarter, they earned $1.47 per share. For the last 6 months, you earned $2.52 per share. Again, they pay out $6.56 per share. So they are giving you lots and lots of money over at IBM, at least of what they're printing to that income side. Now, in terms of our balance sheet, so we'll take a look at what's going on here. We've got the right-hand column is the beginning of the year. This left-hand column is kind of 6 months into the year. We see cash and cash equivalents went down quite a bit. So whenever you see this went from $13.2 billion all the way down to $7.4 billion. You like to figure out, well, where did that go? I think off the top of your head, I rattled through a bunch of acquisitions. So yeah, some cash probably went to that, but their biggest acquisition was estimated under $2 billion. This is even more than that. So you like to think, well, maybe they paid off some debt or something like that. So we'll get to that here in a second. All things being considered, total current assets, again, went down by about $9 billion. Okay, a lot of that is the cash portion of the business. Same thing for total assets, total liabilities. This is where you get some insight into what they did with their debt payments. So you got short-term debt went from 7.1 down to 6.4. So they've paid a little bit here. We've got our long-term debt here. That went from 54 all the way down to 48. So it looks like they took some cash out of the balance sheet and acquired some companies and paid down some debt. I like that combination, okay? Because you pay down debt, obviously you're paying less to the bank in interest, and you're using some of that money to acquire companies, which should impact you from a revenue perspective as well. Now, finally, they've got a little cash flow. So this is cash flow statement. It's not a full one, but this will give us an idea. So here's our acquisitions. So here's our 3 months ended here, 21. Here's our 6 months ended. This kind of middle column is 21. We see just in the last quarter, they spent that $1.747 billion in acquisition. I would assume a lot of that is this Turbonomic deal, okay? Some of these other deals that I talked about, they probably haven't closed, or if they did close, they were for a pretty small amount of money. So all things being considered, though, look in the last 6 months, IBM spent $2.8 billion just on acquisitions. They've paid about $2.9 billion in dividends over the last 6 months, and then you see this debt here as well. So $2.3 billion, about $586 million just in the last quarter. So you're seeing last year at this time, they actually took on $4 billion worth of debt. And you see for 6 months, we're actually paying that down. So we're paying it down, we're paying dividends, we're acquiring companies. All things being considered, probably a pretty positive trend for shareholders. And we have seen over the last couple months, really since February, this stock was like at 119 and it has just rocketed up. It was up at 153. And even right now, we're seeing this stock trade. I'll drop this line to about where we're at here. We're sitting right around here where my cursor is kind of spinning around, right at about 141. Now, I have this zoomed out for a couple of reasons. What I wanted to show you is the general trend with IBM is kind of have a rocket up move and then a sell-off and a kind of a consolidating move. Here, we had a little bit of an uptrend. This one's not as steep, but we had a big downdraft in IBM shares, big uptrend, big gap down, and then we had a big upward trend. Now, not a lot of that means anything. Those trends can go away for a number of different reasons. But I just wanted to show you IBM, in my opinion, can be a stock that you can trade you could probably trade this stock profitably. And if it's something that you held for, more than a quarter or two, more like a kind of a swing trade or a multi kind of month trade, Well, you'd be collecting a little bit of dividend on that one as well. So what I wanted to show you here, though, is we had a nice uptrend going on this stock, and like a lot of stocks over the last week and really over the last few days, the trend is broken down, and it's broken down in the market now. We've popped back up here right where you'd expect, right about $141, because there is some demand for the shares here, right where we're trading right now. Okay, it acted as support all along here, and once we broke through, it kind of came up, and now we're hitting our head on resistance-wise right on that $141 per share mark with IBM. Now, you'd like to see it hold this level. If it doesn't hold this level, okay, I think we have a high probability of filling this gap. This is where the stock was trending anyways. We're trying to fill this gap between about 133 and 138. I think on the bottom end of that, another reason why I had this stock zoomed way out is this level right here at $132 per share. It's about $9 lower than where the stock is trading right now. I love this level, okay? It acted as support all along here, acted as resistance for months along here. Once we broke above it, it acted as kind of like the launching pad here. If we come back and retest 132, I like that level with IBM. Now, could it break 132? Yeah, you break 132, this thing's probably coming way down, okay? We have a completely broken trend there. I wouldn't necessarily want to go all in at this 131, 132 level with IBM, but it would be an area I would be interested in. Not only that, you shave $9 off the share price. Well, guess what? This dividend yield probably looks even more attractive, and now that interest rates are actually dropping, these higher yield paying stocks could catch favor at some point with the market. Now, all bets are off right now because in the after hours, investors are liking something about this Q2 results and potentially the conference call over at IBM, because this stock is now trading above 141. If it keeps trading above 141, you like to come back and retest these all-time highs or these highs that we've made recently back at 152. You break above that, then this uptrend is likely still intact, and this was just a temporary drop. We'll see what happens in the coming weeks. Maybe in the comments, let me know down what you think. And if you consider subscribing or liking to the channel, I'd appreciate that as well. Hopefully, you guys have a great day out there. Good luck with your investments.